To Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted on Tuesday, February the 4th, the committee will resume its study on intimate partner and domestic violence in Canada. Given the ongoing pandemic situation, in light of the recommendations from public health authorities, as well as the directive of the Board of Internal Economy on October 19th, 2021, to remain healthy and safe, the following recommend attending in person. Anyone with symptoms should participate in Zoom and not in person. Everyone must maintain 2 meters physical distancing, whether you're seated or not. Everyone must wear a non-medical mask when circulating in the room, and it's recommended that you keep your mask on at all times, even if you're sat. Everyone present must maintain proper hygiene by using the hand sanitizer at the room entrance. Committee rooms are cleaned before and after, and we're asking that if you're leaving your seat, that you wipe your seat off as well, just to help out for the next person. For those participating virtually, I would like to outline a few rules to follow. You may speak in both official languages, of course, and to all of the people on here today, just to ensure you know that there is translation services on here, go to the interpretation and choose your language. Before speaking, please wait until your name is recognized. And just a reminder, just make sure you put your booms down too, so it's easier for us to understand you and getting things controlled. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. And when speaking, please speak slowly and clearly. So try not to speak like me. Before we begin, I'd like to inform members that the committee received a report in one official language only. This actually came from Women's Shelters Canada. Because the report is quite substantial, its length is in about 400 pages. The Translation Bureau will not be available to provide a translation of the report before the end of the study. Nonetheless, I do believe it's important for all the members to have access to the report and for the committee to take it into consideration for this study. I would like to seek the approval of this committee to have the executive summary of the report translated, which is about 10 pages. And just a little bit more information, Lise Martin has provided us an excellent document that was just recently written. The document, about 150 pages so in just information, and then there's a bibliography and there's testimony and footnotes. There's lots of great things. But I believe that if we are to ask for the executive summary, we'd be able to get that translated. And by doing it as part of the committee, saying we need at least this part translated for us, that would be in a good. And then for us, then we can, at our own, be able to read the rest of the report. But officially, it was only received in one official language, but this is an exceptional report that we should be looking at. So I'm just going to ask the committee, can I get the committee, is it the will of the committee to proceed to ask them to take the executive summary and to translate it on our behalf so that we are able to have this to add to our study notes and to our reports? Can I get a show of hands? All those in favor for asking the translation for this executive summary? All of those in favor? All of those not in favor? Happy, joyful. Clerk, you have your marching orders. If you could ensure that we get that done, that'd be wonderful. And before we welcome our witnesses, I'd like to provide this trigger warning. We will be discussing experiences related to violence and assault. This may be triggering to viewers with similar experiences. If you feel distressed or you need help, please advise the clerk. I think that's really important for all the witnesses, for all of the people that are on these panels, the questioners, ourselves as members of Parliament. Let's just be recognizing that these are very difficult discussions that we are having. And so let's always try, although it's never going to be lighthearted, let's also try to be compassionate, especially to the people that we're speaking to. On today's first panel, I'm really excited to welcome the Sudbury Women's Centre, Giuliana Carpenter, and if I say your name wrong, please correct me. From the Women's Shelters Canada, we have Lise Martin, and welcome, Lise. And from West Central Women's Resource Centre, we have Lori English. I am going to ask each of you get 5 minutes. I've got my beautiful little watch here right now. I will start winding up for you, but we're asking that you all try to stay to that 5 minutes, especially since time is so crazy right now. I'm going to pass it over to Giuliana for 5 minutes. You've got the floor.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Julia, and I'm the Executive Director of the Sudbury Women's Centre, which is located in Northern Ontario. The Sudbury Women's Centre offers a safe place to support women in their journey of getting where they are now to where they want to be. We've been helping women in our community for over 40 years. As with all organizations in Canada, we all know that the number of domestic violence situations have increased over the years. This pandemic has created a spike in intimate partner violence, as we've seen an increase in financial and mental health strains on the family due to COVID. These lockdowns meant many women were unsafe in their own homes, with less ways for them to escape the atmosphere of abuse and control. According to a spokesperson from the Sudbury Police, from March 17th to May 26, 2020, Sudbury Police fielded 367 domestic dispute calls, which is an increase of 7% since 2019. We'll only learn the exact numbers when reporting is published and when women come forward with their stories. As I stated in the beginning, we offer a safe place for women to escape what is happening in the outside world. In 2019, we saw an average of 150 to 250 women access our center per week. That could be attending a workshop that we have, computers in our library, or getting some free clothing for themselves and their children. Once the pandemic hit, we followed the public health regulations and we closed the center. We did continue to offer support for our clients virtually, over the phone, or met with them at the center to do curbside pickup for some of their basic need items. Due to the closures, women did not have our center to visit during the day and get away from their abusers for a couple of hours to sit with staff and do safety plans. In 2020, we were physically open for 6 months, and we still saw over 2,700 women seek our support. We did our best to keep up with the demands of our clients and the staff capacity that we had. We know that there are so many other women that are trying to access our services or others within the community. Collaboration has become an important element for us, and this pandemic really showcases the importance of working together, supporting one another. Our staff mental health has also been an important element in learning to handle the pressures of COVID in their own lives and dealing with burnout. In the last bit of time, I want to share one story from our community told via the Sudbury Star, our local newspaper. This is not a story from one of our clients. It details one abuser's dealings with domestic violence, not in just one incident, but in 3 separate intimate partners over a span of a year, as well as violence towards children. This one story shows the need to increase support in our community for intimate partner violence and mental health support for women, children, and supporting staff that are helping these clients. In September 2020, the abuser and his partner became separated. The abuser came to the woman's home, used physical violence on the woman, her son, and his teenage daughter. He pulled out a switchblade, put it to his daughter's throat, and pushed her head in towards a wall. The abuser told his partner that he was so mad he could seriously hurt his teenage daughter. May 2021, the abuser was in a new relationship with a second woman. She called police to report the abuser beat her, and she had fled to a friend's residence. The abuser grabbed her hand, pushed her head into the wall, put his thumbs into her eye sockets, and he proceeded to verbally assault her while choking her throat. October 2021, a third woman called police reporting the same abuser was upset that she had ended her relationship and that he had been harassing her through social media as well as texts. It was brought up in court that the abuser suffered from emotional and verbal abuse as a child, as he saw domestic violence in his own home. This is the cycle that needs to be broken, as the children he's abused now need that help. One of the women wrote in a victim statement, "Because of these offenses, I haven't been able to sleep at night. I can't open my windows at all because I'm afraid to do so. In my home, I feel as someone is looking through my windows. I'm afraid to leave my home. I'm afraid that he will be outside the door. I can't trust anyone." In closing, the Sudbury Women's Center is a nonprofit charitable organization dedicated to providing information, referrals, and support services to women who've been impacted by violence and or difficult life situations. I'm confident in the investments by the government to address intimate partner violence in reports and within organizations that we will create that positive change that we're looking for. It will take time in collaboration with other organizations, but I do see this happening. We're committed to serving the needs of women in our community to create and maintain a safe environment that is inclusive and respectful of diversity. Thank you.
Juliana, and now I've got your name properly. Thank you very much. That was well done. Passing it over to Lise Martin from the Women's Shelters. Go ahead, Lise. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much for this invitation. Women's Shelters Canada brings together 15 provincial and territorial shelter organizations representing over 600 shelters across Canada. The COVID pandemic has challenged us all on so many levels. For women and children living with violence, the anguish is indescribable. As reported by the Canadian Observatory on Femicide, last month alone, 20 women died by femicide. That is one woman every day and a half. These are not merely statistics. Last week, her name was Ashley Wadsworth from Vernon, BC. The first point I'd like to make is that intimate partner violence, domestic violence, and gender-based violence are non-partisan issue. My plea to you today is to always keep this front and center in your deliberations. No one is immune to intimate partner violence and domestic violence. They do not discriminate. However, there are differential impacts, and certain groups of women face much higher levels of violence. Among them, First Nation, Inuit and Métis women, women with disabilities, racialized women, and trans women. I will focus on two of Women's Shelters Canada's roles. Firstly, as the organization that oversaw the distribution of COVID emergency funds to shelters, and secondly, as the organization that has, since its inception in 2013, been bringing together civil society organizations to advocate for a national action plan. March 13, 2020 is one of those dates that is etched in our memory. Within a week, we were in discussions with WAGE on how emergency funds could be expedited to shelters. We realized this was a huge undertaking, and as a team of 6, we knew our world was about to turn upside down. We were, however, compelled to take this on as shelters were in dire need of these supports, and we knew we could deliver quickly and efficiently. There was and is no partisanship in this exercise. All shelters had access to the same amount of funds, and all were contacted at the same time. By April 4th, 2020, funds started flowing to shelters. In 2020, Women's Shelters Canada transferred $36 million to shelters across the country. The average shelter was $99,000. Many shelters could not have remained open had these funds not been provided. Commitment by 2021. Women's Shelters Canada is in the process of distributing $81 million to shelters for response and recovery. Collaboration between civil society organizations, and government, and between the federal government and provincial governments have made it possible for women and children to continue to access services throughout the pandemic. On behalf of shelters and transition houses, I'd like to thank the federal government for its leadership in providing these emergency funds to GBV services and for recognizing the life-saving work that they accomplish day in and day out. As we hopefully move out of this pandemic, we are looking to the federal government to show this same level of leadership and for provincial governments to show this same level of collaboration in order to move forward with the National Action Plan. In January of 2021, working with over 40 GBV experts from across the country, we embarked on a massive and highly ambitious 4-month project to develop a framework for Canada's National Action Plan. Why do we need a National Action Plan? Simply put, the levels of services and protection provided to women and people of marginalized genders should not depend on their postal codes. One of the questions we answered was, what will it take for Canada's National Action Plan to be successful? It will need to have independent oversight and evaluation, billions in investments, not millions, an all-of-government approach, cooperation and coordination between federal and provincial territorial governments, the voices and experiences of those most affected at the center, and systemic solutions for systemic problems. The end product of this project was a comprehensive report, which we are tabling for the committee in the context of this study, that provides a ready roadmap for the National Action Plan and its secretariat. During last Friday's session, a question was asked in terms of the plan's 10-year timeline appearing seemingly long. A NAP is about systemic change. Systemic change takes time, and Canada's National Action Plan must be developed in a way that will allow it to bring this change despite which government is in power. We owe it to the 44% of women who will experience violence at one point in their life, and to the hundreds of women and children who lose their lives each year as a result of domestic violence. Let's not forget, domestic violence is a nonpartisan issue. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lise, and thanks for watching my pen. You guys are awesome. I'm going to now pass it on to Lori English with the West Central Women's Resource Center. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, honorable members of Parliament and distinguished colleagues. Thank you for the invitation to present to this committee today. My name is Lori English, and I'm the Executive Director at the West Central Women's Resource Center. Our center is located in downtown Winnipeg, and we've been providing supports to women and gender diverse people throughout the city for more than 20 years. One of the critical services that we provide is supporting people who have experienced gender-based violence. Gender-based violence is one of the most pervasive health risks to women and gender diverse people in Canada. It also has one of the most underfunded responses to a health risk. Evidence has demonstrated that intimate partner violence is dramatically underreported in Canada. Only about 1/3 of women report violence to police. As a result, our ability to gather data and to respond to the enormity of this problem has been limited. But here's what we do know. On average, it takes 7 times to successfully leave a violent situation. This is due in large part to a lack of a sustained response to experiences of violence. The lack of resources once the crisis is over often leads women back to violence. We need supports that respond to both the immediate crisis, but also that assist women and gender diverse people to rebuild their lives once they've exited violence. The impacts of gender-based violence are tremendous. Victims often experience chronic illness, stress, increased problematic substance use, and increased mental health conditions. Children who are victims of violence can see negative impacts with their health and development and are increasingly likely to become involved in violent relationships later in life. Men who are perpetrators of violence have often previously been victims of violence and therefore need to heal their own trauma as part of the work to break the cycle. In addition, gender-based violence contributes negatively to the social determinants of health, including increased levels of poverty, housing insecurity, food insecurity, job loss, and unemployment. It is one of the leading pathways for women and gender diverse people into homelessness, and that homelessness is one of the key reasons that women return to violent situations. When violence and housing insecurity intersect, our systems are woefully inadequate. Our homelessness sector is not equipped to deal with GBV. Much of our GBV sector is not equipped to deal with the complications of homelessness or of working with people who use substances or have complex mental health issues. Neither sector is adequately supporting members of the 2S LGBTQ+ community. The result is that those who are most vulnerable are often the most underserved and left with literally no safe options. We also know that COVID-19 added further barriers to women accessing safe and appropriate supports. The important and critical public health measures of restriction and isolation have exacerbated stressors facing those at risk of violence. This increased stress has resulted in an increased likelihood of violence within relationships at home and within intimate partnerships. For many years, Manitoba's violence against women rates have been the highest in the country and are twice the national average. We are in urgent need of significant and sustained investments in addressing gender-based violence. In order to be effective, we need intersectional approaches to violence prevention and recovery. Currently in Manitoba, populations that are particularly underserved are Indigenous people, newcomers, people with disabilities, and 2S LGBTQ+ women and gender diverse people. These are the greatest areas of need because Indigenous women are 2.5 times more likely to be victims of violence than non-Indigenous women. Newcomer women are more vulnerable to domestic violence due to economic dependence, language barriers, and lack of knowledge about community resources. People who identify as lesbian, bisexual, trans, or gender diverse are 3 to 4 times more likely to experience intimate partner violence. Almost all of the women we work with tell us that one of their greatest barriers in accessing supports, as well as in their desire to report, is a lack of cultural safety. Yet our gender-based violence sector nationally and especially here in Manitoba remains woefully underfunded and has been for decades. We urgently need to implement critical principles of harm reduction in our shelter system, but we can't until our shelters are adequately funded to have more than 1 or 2 staff working at a time to ensure safety. We need to be able to respond to the demanding need for violence recovery supports, but we can't when caseloads of GBV workers creep higher while their wages remain lower than any other essential service. We desperately need responses that go beyond the 30-day shelter stay, because when women exit without a plan that includes income and housing, returning to the cycle is often their only option. We need to treat gender-based violence as the critical health crisis that it is and work to eradicate it with the commitment that we would to any other health crisis. Thank you.
Fantastic. And you guys are right up and right on board. Thank you so much to our three witnesses. We're now going to move over to questions and answers. Today, it starts off with the 6-minute round. You're going to find at 5 minutes, I'll put my finger up at 5 minutes. That's just reminding the person who is questioning, you've got 1 minute left to get question and answer out there. So 5 minutes, I'll be giving you a mark. And for anybody else, a minute out. So our first round, it starts off with Michelle Ferreri, Mark Saray, Louise Chabot, and then Leah Gazan. So Michelle, you have the floor for 6 minutes.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you to our witnesses today. I couldn't agree more with this this being a nonpartisan issue, and I'm happy to be on a committee that I think we all agree on that one for sure. Lots of distressing stories coming out here, and I think COVID has absolutely magnified an underlying issue that we had long before this pandemic. I'm curious how the funding is allocated or how it would help you. I know what I'm hearing is almost 2 tiers of you have to manage and support these women and their children when they come to you. But how much more funding do you want for prevention? And, in our first story from Julia about that systemic trauma from the abuser, is your shelters, do you feel like in a state of just sustaining and helping in the crisis mode, or is there other, would you like to do more in terms of prevention and helping with funding?
So for myself, we are a center that we provide resources and support for our clients. So we collaborate and partner with various other shelters that are here in Sudbury for women. And the prevention element is having support staff there to be able to provide support for the women that are coming in. We have to, due to COVID, have to make sure that we have a client coming in and working with our staff one-on-one. There's some people that aren't coming in for a week or so. And those are the type of elements, if by having extra support staff, we can help out in that element. And then some of the prevention elements would be working in collaboration with other organizations in our community and working on an evaluation type of piece that we can get some research and be able to help for the future.
Thank you so much for that. I'm curious if you're able to work with employers, because I think that's a big barrier when you're a woman in that situation, when you're talking about the increase of poverty, socioeconomic issues, finding an employer, getting them back on their feet, work. Do you have partners in that aspect?
Yes, we do work with partners within our community that we help with some of our clients to be able to get, they may not have been in the workforce for a couple of years for whatever the reason may be. So we'll make sure that we have the resume support and going through the job process. And we also help them get the training at that partner organization, as well as working within our center with a paid program. So it is being paid through the other organizations as well as through ours. So we kind of do a 50-50 on the wage and help them get that the money that they need and the experience.
Would like to I'd like to ask a little bit about I just lost my whole train of thought there. I'm so sorry about that, guys. Welcome to me. Yes, I did have a great question there and it just left me, so I apologize for that. I'm going to let Layla take over for me if that's all right. Sorry about that.
Thank you so much. I'm going to really quickly, part of our study is studying the legislative experiences of different states and countries. And so I was just wondering, and I'm going to start by asking the question to Ms. Martin from the Women's Shelters Canada. But I'm just wondering, on the legislative side, are there any jurisdictions we should be looking to that are perhaps doing things that are either innovative or cutting edge?
In terms of the National Action Plan, we've often looked to Australia. And so Australia actually has recently completed their first 12-year plan. And so they had divided it into 4 3-year plan in order to constantly be reevaluating what they were doing and adding to it. And, they obviously, they have not eliminated gender-based violence in the 12 years and are in the process now of working with civil society organizations and their provincial governments to develop Australia's second national action plan. And for us, it definitely is a model because it did include civil society organizations throughout, and we feel that that's an important part of Canada's National Action Plan, is to have an independent advisory council working side by side with the Secretariat.
Fantastic. I was wondering if quickly any of the other panelists had any jurisdictions we should look to or any legislative solutions that exist.
I guess another one, if you don't, I can take the minute.
Please, go for it.
Well, just in terms of the story that Julia talked about. So, what came to mind was Clare's Law. And Clare's Law is something that has been adopted. It was first adopted in Saskatchewan. It's just recently been adopted in Alberta, I believe in one of the Atlantic provinces. And for me, that's an example of what Canada's National Action Plan can do, is again provide the comparable and the same levels of services across the country. So provincial governments having coming into agreement that there be Clare's Law.
I don't want to interrupt, but I do see her pen. I was just wondering if anyone else had anything quickly to add. Otherwise, we can get to that in another round.
Yeah, Leila, we'll have to get that to another round. Sorry. We are going to pass it over to Marc Charest. Marc, you have 6 minutes.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
For the three witnesses, just your 5 minutes, opening remarks were really detailed. Set the stage here for our study. So I'm going to ask a question to the three. I'll start with Lise Martin. So one, I want to thank you for the leadership, your organization on distributing the 100 million COVID funding rapidly, within days of a fiscal year to women's shelters. I heard a lot of writing in Sudbury and West Nipissing how beneficial that was, and also your support for the $200 million to get that to the shelters in a fast and expedient way. But my question, these, and then I'll ask both witnesses too, when we talk about these leverages that we provided with the 100 million and the 200 million, how has that leveraged participation with the provinces? So when we talk about core funding from the federal government, we talk about funding from the provincial government, how is that linked? And has the federal funding supported your member agencies, Lise Martin, to try and look at some of those services? Because the flexibility is important. So I don't want to pinpoint, I want to leave the money open. So can you talk a bit about the criteria, how fast the money was, and is that supporting some of the provincial partners to help play a role here with the federal government leading up to the National Action Plan?
Well, I definitely, the funds were definitely flexible. So it really was up to each shelter to decide. As we know, the situation varies so much from region to region across the country. So, shelters were able to spend the money in terms of whether it be in the early days, PPE, alternative accommodation, transportation. We all know in rural areas, there's virtually no public transportation, so that can become very, very costly. And again, this is one of those situations where it differs from province to province. And so I can say, for example, that the Saskatchewan government did not offer any additional funding to its shelters. I think Manitoba was, if they did, it was minimal. So, again, a patchwork of across the country.
No, go ahead.
Well, just to say that the shelters have said that, had this funding not been made available, they probably, to my knowledge, no shelter closed during the pandemic, and that could not have happened.
And Ms. Carpenter, thank you for the work that you do in Greater Sudbury and with the partners. And I wanted to ask you, like, for the COVID funding and the funding that you receive from the federal government, and I know you received some of the human trafficking funding of close to 400,000. How is that helping the center, but also leveraging? Because I heard in Ontario there was the province came to the table with the federal funding. So how is that supporting you and moving forward those recommendations linked back to the National Action Plan?
So definitely the federal funding amounts for the human trafficking, as you brought up, has given us the ability to communicate and work with other agencies in Northern Ontario. So we're working with 6 other communities and with their local coalitions, which is wonderful because we're now able to create a pathway with all of these 6 communities to be able to help women in their supporting of being in human trafficking. So that has definitely helped us.
And you mentioned, Ms. Carpenter, about the children, the support for children. The money that you receive from the federal government or some of the funding on the provincial side, how is what are your recommendations to look at families and children also?
So we are assisting any women if they're looking into, like the question earlier with regards to employment. So we have some childcare supports that we are able to help on the children's side. We also work with a variety of different organizations who specifically work with children to offer different programming for them. So we will offer those referrals and those supports to any of the women that have children and who need them in that situation.
And Ms. English, about the funding on the COVID side and the federal linkages to the provinces, core funding, do you have any recommendations and comments on that?
So as Lise mentioned, we did not see a match from the provincial government here in Manitoba. The funds that we accessed actually didn't come through Women's Shelters Canada, as we aren't a shelter, we're a resource center, but we did receive funding through the Canadian Women's Foundation specifically to respond to gender-based violence. Had that not been provided, it would have been extremely difficult for us to keep pace with the demands on our services. But what I really want to add is that I think a partnership between the federal government and the province is the best way forward for us to provide much needed services beyond a 30-day shelter stay. I think we all know that transformation to the sector is needed in order to break the cycle of violence, and that won't come without partnerships between the federal and provincial levels of government.
And I have 30 seconds, Ms. Martin, on the
You've
national.
got about 14 seconds.
14. So the National Action Plan, I just wanted to make sure so I know you're involved and we'll get a chance to talk a bit about that, but thank you so much for your involvement in National Action Plan and looking at leveraging that 10-year span to make some systemic changes. Merci. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so
Madam
much.
Chair.
You're welcome. And we're going to now move it over to Louise. Louise, you have 6 minutes.
Merci. Bonjour, Madame la.
Thank you. Hello, Madam Chair. Hello, everyone. I'm very pleased to be with you here today with a big responsibility, replacing your colleague, Andréane, today. And I'll say today, like we say to students in school with a substitute teacher, please be patient. I would like to sincerely thank the witnesses. Thank you for your presentations. We are really able to understand what you go through in your field and in your regions. We know that your work is so important. It always is important, but especially so during the pandemic, where there was increase in intimate partner and domestic violence. My first question is for Ms. Carpenter. You gave an example of an aggressor who victimized 3 people. I think that we can identify issues, yes, but it's important to also look at solutions. In Quebec, domestic violence has become an important issue. And there's a special tribunal that was created for that. And there are bracelets as well to keep people away. This is something that is unique to Quebec, and I would like to ask the following question. For the perpetrators, could the federal government take a step kind of like Quebec with their solution?
So on our end of things, I think that would be a really, I don't know too much detail with regards to the bracelets, but it may be a very interactive way to be part of that. I also overheard on the Friday meeting that there was an app that is in development that I can definitely see would be very beneficial for our clients as well, to be able to have a safe place to text. We currently just work with partners in our community and work closely with one another to be able to link. We're part of various end violence against women coalitions and human trafficking coalitions to be able to make those linkages and trying to partner and do the best that we can.
Bien, merci.
Very good. This is a vast study, and it also has to do with coercive control, and this is illustrated in different ways. There are all types of violence. But they often lead to the death of women and men in domestic violence. And there are different countries in Europe, for example, in Spain and Australia, which you quoted earlier, or England, where they wanted to act preemptively to avoid situations of femicide, which are far too numerous. With regards to coercion, Miss Martin, Miss Martin, are there any ideas that we could have and use in the at the federal level? Answer: for the UK, I know that they have a certain expertise, so that could answer your question with regards to looking towards other countries and taking inspiration from there. With regards to control, this has been studied by a parliamentary committee, and we believe that this study should continue because it is an important element. And we have a campaign ongoing to show that violence is much broader than one might think, and it's important to be aware of that.
Merci.
20 seconds. 20 seconds.
Very good. You have 20 seconds. So in 20 seconds, I'll just see if you have anything to add. I just wanted to show that in Quebec, for sentences, they need a better support from the federal government. Thank you.
It on, and I'm going to pass it over to 6 minutes for Leah Gazan. Go ahead, Leah.
Thank you so much, Chair, and I'd like to thank all the witnesses for your excellent presentations today. And I wanted to start out with Ms. English. I know you spoke about the need to fund it with the urgency it deserves, as all other health crises that we're currently experiencing, and I couldn't agree with you more on that. I know that you mentioned in Manitoba that we currently have the highest rates of violence in the country. And you spoke to the desperate needs to use an intersectional approach, especially with underrepresented populations, underserved, including Indigenous, Black, 2S, LGBTQ+, newcomer communities, disability community. Can you explain why there is a need and what that looks like on the ground in terms of urgency?
Sure. Thank you for the question. I think what we have seen is that typically the shelter model has been set up pretty traditionally, and not a lot has shifted, at least in the shelter model here in Manitoba. And so what we often find is that it underserves folks who have perhaps more complex needs. That's due in part to the fact that our shelter system is underfunded. And so the staffing required to support people with complex mental health or substance use disorder, for example, just those needs cannot be met with the current levels of staffing based on the amount of funding that shelters receive. But also what we hear frequently from our community that we serve is that shelters are often ill-equipped to support women, for example, who don't have English as their first language, who don't have knowledge or the capacity to support different cultural practices inside their shelters. And so when women get there, they're often disconnected from their cultural communities. They're disconnected from their friends and families of support, and the shelter staff are all that they have to depend on. And so when those shelter staff aren't equipped to meet the needs that they're presenting with, women won't stay. And it's one of the reasons that they leave shelter and return back to violent situations. So ensuring that we have shelters that have the capacity to support people in a culturally safe way is critically important. I think another barrier that we see frequently here in Manitoba is folks who are part of a gender diverse population, folks who are trans, non-binary, gender non-conforming, typically don't find shelter spaces safe environments for them. And so often they will not access shelter services. And what we can offer them is literally nothing. And so exploring options to provide an alternative, more specialized type of shelter, I think is critical for us to ensure that we're meeting the needs of the folks who are the absolute most vulnerable in these situations of violence.
Thank you so much. My next question is actually a follow-up from Ms. English's comments. Ms. Martin, I looked at key takeaways from your study, and one of them talks about voices and experience of people most affected at the center, people living in rural and remote areas, Indigenous people, Black people, people with disabilities, racialized people, non-binary and trans people, 2S LGBTQ plus people, and migrant people. It's important to hear the voices and experiences of those people most impacted. How is that impacting actually being able to come up with one of your other key takeaways, for systemic solutions for systemic problems that are already existing?
Was that for me or Lori?
Yes, it was. It was for you. Thank you. Just a follow-up from Ms. English's response.
Sorry. Yes, well, I think, again, you need to have those most impacted, their voice inform the systemic change that needs to happen. They are the ones who are falling through the cracks. You need to hear from them directly. In terms of, we have a large bureaucracy who does really good work and keeps the wheels turning, but they don't have the ear to the ground. And it's critical that having that ear to the ground be able to inform the work that needs to happen. And it's not enough just to have a policy. For example, the bracelets. This is a new thing. It's starting in Quebec, but it has been implemented in certain jurisdictions, sort of in a haphazard testing mode. But if the police aren't going to follow through, there's no point in having these bracelets. So that is an instance of, you need to be talking to people on the ground, those most affected, to see if your policy is actually working.
5 seconds left, Leah.
Okay, I would just say thank you very much then. Thanks to the witnesses. I look forward to the next round. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. No, you had 45 seconds left.
Oh,
You're good.
I thought you said I had 5 seconds left. Okay.
No.
Okay, let's reverse the clock then. Okay. So, Miss English, you talked about how gender-based violence is one of the pathways to experiencing homelessness. Can you please expand on that?
Right. So one of the things that we know is when women exit shelter, if they don't exit with a plan to house them beyond that, they're likely to return to the violent situation that they recently left. So one of the critical pieces when considering a funding model and a sustainable pathway forward is to look at housing options connected to folks who've experienced violence, be that transitional housing or permanent housing. Without housing solutions, the cycle will continue to repeat.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We're going to go on to our second round, but I'm going to modify it a little bit because in 10 minutes, we're going to be starting another panel. So what I'm going to ask is that the Conservatives, 2 questions from the Conservatives, 2 questions from the Liberals, 1 question from the NDP, 1 question from the Bloc, and this should provide us 10 minutes. So I'm kind of looking at 3.5 to 4 minutes. So 2 questions starting off with the CPC.
Thank you so much, and thanks for everyone's patience. This question is to Lori English. In your 2020 annual report, you mentioned funding received from the federal government that helped women at risk access temporary hotel stays. What was the dollar amount for this funding, and how was it allocated to your organization?
Thanks for the question. So we received funding through the Reaching Home agreements to our housing program. And so part of the intention of that funding was to house folks in hotel who either couldn't be served by gender-based violence shelters because they had reached their capacity, particularly with reductions in capacity due to COVID-19, or to folks who weren't a good fit to shelter service. I would have to pull up my annual report to give you an exact number, but it was somewhere in the neighborhood of about $250,000 that we received. And over that time, we were successful in housing over 50 women through that program. So it was an out-of-the-box thinking in response to the COVID-19 pandemic that actually produced really exceptional results. And we would love to continue to see that kind of thinking used in a plan moving forward.
Thank you. I'm going to, I think my colleague is next. Am I allowed to have a follow-up to that, Chair, or no?
No, we just don't have it. I'm afraid we don't have time. I'm going to pass it on to Dominique for your question.
Oui, bonjour tout le monde.
Hello, everyone. I'll be quick because I know I don't have a lot of time. I believe that we're not talking a lot about boys and men and breaking the cycle, which is so important. What do you see in your organizations where children are witnesses to family violence? What is the continuum that you see later? What do you see in their behavior of these boys, and how do you intervene and support them in a house or in a shelter? Ms. Carpenter, perhaps?
Yes, so we work with some organizations within the Sudbury community, actually one of the women's shelters that actually provides a program for boys within the junior high area for that education piece. We also work with other organizations that work with children specifically as well as men, and we try to provide those resources and support to each of the organizations that would be best suited for them. So it's it's not a cookie cutter plan that we have with all of our clients. It's very customized for their needs.
Thank you so much. I believe it's Sonia Sidhu. Sonia, 2 questions for you guys. Okay, passing it over.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all the witnesses for joining us today, and thank you for your leadership to helping all women. My question is to Ms. Martin. You said that 1/3 of women reports they don't report any kind of violence, and racialized women and some groups are experiencing highly than others. Lifetime, even though it's likely they experience similar rates, but can you tell us any programs or strategies that you use to raise awareness of the supports available for racialized women? And you are also talking about app that app is very good, but the people who cannot access that or language barrier, is there any strategy for them?
I think actually it might be maybe Lori can answer as well, but again, it's a hodgepodge across the country. So, you know, in Ontario and specifically in Toronto, there is good interpretation services available, as well in Quebec through SOS Violence Conjugale. But in a place like Manitoba, few and far between. So these are the things that we want addressed through a national action plan.
Second question.
Thank you. To any of our witnesses, the committee is not only looking at how to respond to intimate partner violence, but also the root causes. And Budget 2021 announced $55 million to help organizations increase their ability to prevent and address the root causes of gender-based violence. From your experience, what intervention are the best at minimizing women's risk of violence early on?
So I'll go with that one. On our end, we really see the mental health aspect and the support for the children who are witnessing the domestic violence in the homes. If we, like that one story that I stated, he saw domestic violence in his home growing up. So it's that continuation. So if we're able to create that mental health support for the kids and any other support that they're needing, it may nip that in the bud, as you say, to assist that for the future, and that we can slowly see the numbers go down.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm just going to now pass it over. And Louise, you have time for a question, please.
Merci, Madame Martin.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. In the national action plan that needs to be implemented and could be implemented over 10 years, well, perhaps this is something that already exists elsewhere, but in Quebec there is a strategy to combat family and intimate violence. But at the short term, we could examine the anti-assault bracelet. Could this be a solution that could be implemented throughout the country?
Ça fait partie d'une boîte d'outils.
Answer: this is part of a toolbox. It is a tool amid many others. So if we could have an electronic bracelet which allows police to respond, and they would also need the capacity to do so, which is the case in Quebec.
Thank you so much. And Leah, we're going to pass it over to you for the last question for the panel.
Thank you so much, Chair. My question is for Ms. English. You spoke in your presentation about the need for the need to use harm reduction approaches when looking at the shelter system, or women and diverse gendered individuals leaving intimate partner violence. Could you speak to that, please, and why there's a need, and if there's current gaps in the system in terms of harm reduction approaches to addressing this crisis?
Absolutely. So one of the things we know is that a common response to experiencing gender-based violence is increased substance use. Women cope with trauma in different ways. And we also know that it leads to complex mental health challenges in many people who have experienced prolonged trauma. And so we know that that's a cause of or a result of gender-based violence, yet our systems are not yet set up to support women with those complex needs. Many of our shelters in Manitoba are funded to have 1 or 2 staff on at a time. We can't think about implementing harm reduction approaches so that those vulnerable women can be well served while we only have 1 staff working an overnight shift. But what the end result is then is that those women have no safe places to go. And those are the ones who are most likely to be victimized again. So when we talk about harm reduction, we're talking about not just training staff and providing additional supplies and supports. We're actually talking about a funding model that allows the staff to be adequately resourced so that they can include harm reduction as part of their trauma response to women who are exceptionally vulnerable.
Awesome. Thank you so much. On behalf of the committee, I'd really like to thank the three witnesses today. Thank you so much to Julia Carpenter, Lise Martin, and Lori English for coming here and sharing with us the information on this very important study. I would like to thank the witnesses. We are going to ask the witnesses to leave, and we will be resuming in just a few moments as the new witnesses come on. So if everybody could stay tuned, we'll be back up in a couple minutes. And thank you, witnesses. You're awesome.
Too short.
Have votes, so we're trying to make the best of it. Thank you so much for coming here to join us in this important study as we're looking at violence against women, which is something that all of you have so much information to provide on. I would like to welcome as our second panel today, the London Abused Women's Centre and Jennifer Dunn, Fédération des Maisons de Harbourement pour Femmes, Manon Nenates, and SOS Violence Conjugale, Claudine Thibodeau. Thank you so much for coming in today. Today, the way we'll be working it, each of the panelists will be provided 5 minutes for opening statements. You'll see this lovely little pen start giving you wrap up 15 seconds before, and they'll be going to our rounds of questions. So Jennifer, I'm going to start with you for 5 minutes. You've got the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I would like to thank the committee for having me here today. My name is Jennifer Dunn, and I am the Executive Director of the London Abused Women's Centre. The London Abused Women's Centre is a feminist organization located in London, Ontario, that supports and advocates for personal, social, and political change directed at ending male violence against women and girls. Over the next few minutes, as I talk about our work, I will be referring to our centre as LOC. LOC is a non-residential agency that provides women and girls over the age of 12 who have been abused, assaulted, exploited, and trafficked with immediate access to long-term trauma-informed, woman-centered counseling, advocacy, and support. And as I speak to you today, I am thinking about and remembering 17-year-old Vanessa Bohl. LOC honored Vanessa during the first annual Shine the Light on Women Abuse campaign in 2010. Vanessa was shot to death by Emerson Dominguez in 2003. Vanessa left behind her mother, her father, her sister, and her baby. She had her whole life ahead of her, but instead it was taken from her at the hands of her ex-boyfriend after they broke up. During LOC's last fiscal year, over 4,600 women and girls were provided with individual counseling and group support. This includes over 800 women and girls who reported being trafficked or who were at risk of being trafficked. During the same time, LOC also answered over 5,000 calls for support. LOC would like to acknowledge the importance of this study, but would like to suggest that collectively we cannot study violence, support, protection, preventative measures, education, or even international legislative experiences, without identifying that the issue at the root cause of the concern in this study is men's violence against women and girls. In nearly every province and territory, women and girls are more likely than men to be victims of physical or sexual violence. It takes an enormous amount of courage for women and girls who are being abused, assaulted, or exploited to come forward for help. And when they do, the experiences that women and girls report to organizations like LOC are often very traumatic. So much so, it can affect their cognitive abilities, leaving them in a state of being unable to properly navigate life. Never has it been more important to listen to the voices of survivors and men's violence against women and girls, men's violence against women and girls, about the impact of violence in their lives and about the failure of the systems to address their needs. It is common that women and girls who have experienced violence will struggle with lifelong impacts. Impacts can include physical and mental health conditions such as depression, post-traumatic stress, sexually transmitted infections, absence from school, work, or social isolation. And when speaking about young women and girls specifically, patriarchal and sexist messages are taught consistently through media, online, school, and even in families. The media plays a powerful role in teaching girls that their primary worth comes from being sexually desirable to men, while boys seem to learn it is acceptable for men to have and maintain power and control over young women. Young women aged 15 to 24 are 5 times more likely than women aged 25 and older to have been physically or sexually assaulted. And young women and girls between the ages of 12 and 21 are at the highest risk of being sexually exploited, groomed, and lured into the sex industry, often by traffickers who are their intimate partners. That is why it is very critical to include sexual exploitation and trafficking when addressing the needs of survivors of intimate partner violence. LOC is currently actively providing service right now, today, to 104 young women and girls between 84. And the youngest girl that we are providing support to right now is 13 years old. The London Abused Women's Centre believes the work must start with the goal of shifting the social culture that normalizes men's violence against women and girls for future generations. And to that end, we propose the following recommendations to the committee for the purpose of this study. Number 1, that the Government of Canada commit to the development of legislation to end men's violence against women and girls in all of its forms. This includes amendments to the Criminal Code to identify violence against women, intimate partner violence, and family violence as a specific category of offenses, separate and distinct from other forms of violence, to better protect victims and survivors. The Government of Canada work in collaboration with each province and violence against women organizations to develop a national mandatory violence against women school curriculum for all levels of education from kindergarten to high school. And the Government of Canada commit to ensure that there is an appropriate level of core funding for violence against women organizations providing support like ours. And the truth is that women and girls are at risk for no other reason than the fact that they are women and girls. We know for certain that changes in legislation, education, and funding will improve supports and protection for women and girls in our country. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And sorry, Jennifer, I started doing my wind up, but yeah, we'll just try to keep everything so tight, but thank you. Awesome comments. We're now going to pass it over to Manon Menetes. Manon, you have the floor for 5 minutes. Thank you.
Alors, bonjour, merci.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the members of the committee for inviting the Federation to be here, and thank you as well for your commitment to work on violence against women. The Federation contains 37 women's shelters in Quebec. We help thousands of women and children in our shelters, but we also offer transition services, and we offer community services as well with raising awareness, and we work on prevention. We represent our members at different parliamentary committees, and we work with the government as well. we are working on the implementation of a special tribunal here in Quebec. So we are working on pilot projects, 17 of them in Quebec. The government of Quebec is committed to stopping violence against women, and the special tribunal will hear cases of conjugal violence, but as well of sexual violence. And this is something new. So it's a broader examination of violence, and we are the only provincial association that has members that welcomes women for domestic violence, but also for family violence, for sexual exploitation, human trafficking, forced marriage. So our mandate is much broader for violence towards women. We worked with the government of Quebec, and we are also reviewing the legislation on family law. We're examining a reform that would recognize domestic violence, recognize the definition of the government's intervention system that's been in existence since 1995 in Quebec, and we're at our 5th action plan that has recommendations for different files, whether it be prevention, intervention, psychosocial services. The interpreter regrets, but the sound keeps cutting out. So, sorry to interrupt you.
Cutting out is what we're being advised from the interpreter. To the interpreter from the clerk, does she need to slow down, or what works best? I don't hear the popping, but is it something to do with speed?
This is the interpreter. Apparently it's only in the room.
Only in the room.
Okay.
Clerk, are we okay, clerk, to continue, or would you like her to? I've heard everything, but I don't believe that everybody in the room has heard everything.
Well, the sound is cutting in the room, so we are told that on Zoom everything is okay, but it's really in the room that we're having technical issues. They're trying to work on it, but apparently the Zoom is okay. So
and for the people in the room, I know that Leah, Sonia, Layla, and Michelle are all in the room. Are they missing a lot? I just want to try to get an idea of how bad it is.
Je comprends français, alors c'est pas un problème pour moi.
I understand French, so it's not an issue for me.
Madam Chair, we are okay.
Leah, how's Leah making out?
I'm okay, Chair. Yeah, it's not that bad.
Fantastic. I just wanted to ensure. So, sorry, we will start once again, just from about a sentence before you left off, if you don't mind, and your time will just continue. Thank you.
So I will try to slow down. So, au Québec, il y a une volonté.
In Quebec, there is the political goodwill to put in place the special tribunal and to review the family law in order to take into account domestic and family violence and to examine the best interest of the child. At the Federation, 35% of children who we support are also followed by family services. And we know that it is important in understanding the impacts of domestic violence. For a national plan, that would be very important for us. And I co-chaired the Pan-Canadian Network on Women's Shelters, and we recognize the proactivity of the federal government, who would like to put in place a national plan. The federal government can play a role of leadership and work more closely with provinces. To give you a concrete example, with C-78, we saw amendments to the Divorce Act, and they include a definition of family violence as well as measures to better examine the well-being of the child. This is a federal matter, and so the federal government can work closely with the provinces, and this is something that could be included in the civil code and in family law. And the government of Quebec found its inspiration in the changes to that act, and that's why it's so important to have a national action plan which will see the provinces and the federal government work more closely.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We're now going to move it over to Claudine. Claudine, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Oui, merci beaucoup et merci aussi.
Thank you very much, and thank you again for inviting us. We are very pleased to be here. At SOS, we wanted to talk about us. We work in Quebec on domestic violence. We are available 24 hours a day by phone, and we have been for about 35 years. We offer access to resources regardless of needs and for all people impacted by domestic violence. So, of course, the victims and their family and professionals as well. So you have access to all resources in Quebec by using the one phone number. We also offered services by text message and by chat during the pandemic. So we're pioneering this new way of intervening, and we also noticed that this allows us to reach certain victims who were not using our telephone services for different reasons. For example, voicing their concerns regarding domestic violence was too difficult, and so we had another initiative to help them on that path. So for 35 years, we've been responding to calls, and we've responded to over 850,000 calls. This year, we will probably have over 55,000 requests. This is our busiest year. We're already at 50,000, and we have a month left to go. I would like to share two initiatives that we have at SOS. We have the prevention aspect. It's important to raise awareness regarding intimate partner violence for young people, especially the forms of violence that are more subtle, violence that is not physical. It's important to raise awareness to those forms of violence. It allows people to be aware of it when they're victims of it. So we developed a prevention tool for teenagers and young adults. It's called It's Not Violent. And the not is kind of crossed out in our interactive tool, and we invite young people to participate in discussions, to put themselves in the shoes of a victim so that they can recognize a form of more discreet violence, and it raises their awareness to the realities of victims of violence, and it gives them more empathy. And it allows them to take a position against violence in their own lives. So they are interactive tabs that are very successful in Quebec. They're used in different school environments. On the website, there's an animation guide as well that allows any person, even if they're not a specialist, to host workshops for young people, and we're very pleased with this. We launched this in 2019. The app won a Purple Ribbon Award last year. That's an American award. We had over 385,000 clicks since 2019, and it has been very well received in the fields of education and prevention. We also have paper documents that accompany the online tool. It's bilingual. The paper tools are available in Indigenous languages, in Arabic, in Spanish, and in many other languages. So I would invite you to click on itsnotviolent.com. Another tool that I wanted to share with you is an interactive questionnaire on domestic violence. We realized that a lot of the time when people called SOS, there were a lot of people who would hang up before speaking. We had a lot of people who were apologizing because they were afraid of taking the space of somebody who might need help more. But then when they told us about their situation, we realized that the situation was quite severe. And they were sometimes victims of physical violence that was very dangerous. So this is a tool that helps people who have questions about their relationships. They answer yes or no questions. The questionnaire was launched in November 2020, in about the middle of the pandemic. It's used mostly in Quebec. It's available in French and in English, and we are able to really see the impact of it, and it simplifies access to resources for victims.
So much. This has been fantastic panel. I'm sorry that I'm having to wind you up so quickly. I just know everybody's ready to get to the questions. I'm going to pass it over to Dominique for the first 6 minutes. As everybody sees, I've made this beautiful 1 minute, meaning you have 1 minute left. And
Merci, Karen. C'est très...
Thank you, Karen. I have multiple questions. First off, Ms. Dunn, you talked about recommendations. If you could give details on each of those recommendations and send them to the committee, that would be great. But also, you talked about bringing changes to the laws to put an end to violence against women. Could you give us specific details? What ideas do you have in mind? If you could tell us more about that. And Ms. Chabot was talking about Quebec earlier and talked about an appropriate funding model. What's the specific amount? And then I have a question for Madame Thibodeau. You mentioned that you respond to perpetrators as well, and I would like to know what they say to you and what you respond to them and what you're able to learn from them and teach them, because we do need to speak to boys, young men. We need to break this cycle of violence. And you have very interesting initiatives with the It's Not Violent. That's very interesting. If you could share some results that you were able to note with that tool, that would be great. Ms. Dunn, I have asked all my questions. Please answer.
Thank you very much for your questions. I did plan on sending a briefing as well with detailed recommendations, so I can definitely do that.
Parfait.
So your question to me was around the legislation to end men's violence against women. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. So what the recommendation is that we want to include amendments to the criminal code to identify violence against women specifically. So violence against women, intimate partner violence, and family violence. Right now, there are multiple standalone sections in the criminal code, which really and truly does a disservice to women and girls when they are going through the criminal justice system. And for us, and what we believe is that the separate standalone sections of the code need to be drawn together to really recognize the impacts of violence against women and their children, and that's what we mean by family violence as well. And we feel like that would better protect and provide support to victims and survivors as they go through the criminal justice system. And did you have another question about our recommendation as well?
Oui, en fait, le financement.
So the funding, you talked about having foreseeable funding, increasing funding in order to support your initiatives. Do you have a specific amount in mind when you say an appropriate funding? That's what the interpreter said earlier anyway.
Yes. So when we talk about appropriate levels of funding, what I am referring to is appropriate levels of core funding. So right now, our core funding comes from the provincial government. We do have funding from the federal government as well. But typically the funding that we receive on that level is in the form of funding for a certain amount of time. So 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, depending on what it is. And then what we have to do is then put another or answer another call for proposals. And so when we're speaking about core funding, we want and need funding that is around all of the time. So we do not have to use resources to have to reapply and reapply for funding for work to continue.
C'est beaucoup de temps pour les.
So it takes a lot of time for organizations to make requests for funding. I understand, Ms. Dunn, that you're going to be sending us a brief. So I will move over to Ms. Thibodeau. But I do understand that you will be sending us your brief and we'll have a better idea of your recommendations. So to respond to the question regarding perpetrators, it's a small minority of calls that we receive, perhaps about 1%, if even. And usually when perpetrators call us, well, we're not the ones who intervene. We verify what the needs of the person is, and then we direct them to the appropriate resource. So I'm just going to interrupt you right now then. Would you say then, Ms. Thibodeau, that there are sufficient references to give to violent men? There is a network for men, but we don't have enough resources at night, weekends. Resources for men are often open during the day, and so it's very difficult to put them in contact. And we need to maintain the momentum. We need to give somebody the service that they need when they need it, and to have a 24/7 service would be great to help them to not turn to violence. So if we had more resources, that would be great.
Perfect, and thank you so much. I'm now going to pass it over to 6 minutes to Jenna. Jenna, you have 6 minutes.
I believe Emanuela is up next, actually.
Well, let's throw it your way. 6 minutes with Emanuela.
Thank you, Karen. I guess begin with thanking all of our witnesses. Un grand merci à tous les témoins qui sont ici aujourd'hui.
Thank you to all our witnesses here today. You gave us a lot of very relevant information that will help us with our study.
To the angle of youth and education, and I think that that's my background, and so I'm going to be asking a little bit about that as well. As a teacher who has taught sex ed and who's taught ethics in Quebec high school classrooms, I always believed a young age. So I know that Mrs. Dunn and Madame Thibodeau aussi, you both touched on youth and making sure that we teach our young people from an early age. If you can speak a little bit more to that. I know that it was one of your recommendations, Ms. Dunn. I guess we'll begin with you. And if you can just speak a little bit more to what type of education you think would benefit kids in a classroom in order to help stop and break this cycle.
Sure. Thank you very much for your question. So when we're talking about young women and girls specifically, young women and girls see a lot through media, online. I touched on this when I was speaking, and in schools and even with their families as well. And so women or young girls are growing up learning that their worth comes from being sexually desirable to young men. And boys learn from the same outlets, so media, online, school, friends, family, that it's acceptable for men to maintain power and control over women. And so really having a national mandatory curriculum from kindergarten all the way up to high school is what we would recommend. And I say national because I think it would be very important for the provincial and the federal levels of government to work together to create consistency across the country. So all children learn about the impacts of violence against women throughout their entire school career. And so one of the most important things is to talk about it. And to be honest with you, I have two very young children who are in grade 2, and I know that I can have conversations at that age about how to treat people. And I think starting from a young age is very important.
Thank you very much. Et Madame Thibodeau, je vous lance la question.
And now a question for you, Ms. Thibodeau, because you talked about the programs and the apps that you created with your organization. Do you work with schools and school boards? Do they have access to these tools? Are they aware of the existence of these tools? Answer: we tried to share the initiative as much as we could using social media, through the education ministry. We're hoping that this program will be integrated into as many schools as possible. We got a lot of positive responses from educators because people were asking us to create workshops, to go to their school or to another institution. And unfortunately, we don't have the employees to do all of that. We know that certain partners in shelters offer workshops, but that's why we wanted to create this program, which is self-standing, and anyone can go onto the It's Not Violent website. It shows you how to offer the workshop. It can be done in a big group or a small group. It has 5 aspects on isolation, pressure, geolocalization, and harassment. And youth are asked to answer by putting themselves in the victim's shoes. And it allows them to feel that lack of power that a victim would feel. And we've received a lot of good comments, a lot of young people, a lot of young men actually, and we were surprised. They wrote to us saying, I've done this before, but I didn't know that it was violent. Inaudible. So it's something that a lot of young people think they will identify physical violence and insults, but persistence, for example, and hidden threats, they may not notice. And we receive a lot of thanks from educators. And even if we are not specialists, even if a person's not a specialist, they could host a workshop. How could the federal government help you and help organizations? Initiatives like this one are costly, and it takes time for organizations like ours. We chose to invest in this project because it was very important, and we have other projects that we would like to work on and target even younger groups. We're hoping to create a similar platform. Instead of having prevention, we'll work on equality. We ask young people, what do you want to do in life? What kind of job do you want? Not what kind of girlfriend or boyfriend do you want to be? We want to help them define themselves. Thank you.
So much. We're now going to pass it over to Louise Chabot. Louise, you have 6 minutes.
Merci. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Thank you to our witnesses. My first question is for Ms. Thibodeau. I would like to welcome you and thank you for the work that you do in Quebec through your organization to educate people and to ensure that we can put a stop to all forms of violence against women. I have a question for you. I went on your website and you have a link on coercion and control. 60 to 80% of women ask for help in cases of domestic violence or were victims of control or coercion. Do you think this is an issue that the government should focus on? Answer: yes, we need to have a better understanding of domestic violence. We need to examine the power dynamic. There are some tools that allow us to examine this. Perpetrators are mostly men, and they work on having this power that they believe they are entitled to. This is why at SOS we try very hard to work on this. We work with different resources, with different shelters. And the shelters throughout Quebec are also working very hard on this. And we're trying to develop tools to help in these fields to show victims, is this something that you're going through? On our website, SOS Info is what you mentioned. There are articles that explain to victims and their close ones the different forms of violence, and we try to be as concrete and clear as possible. I think there are about 20 listed on the website, so that's another tool that we use to raise awareness. On our website, we also have a section with testimonies to help people understand. So, articles that are more emotional and the questionnaire is more interactive. So we try to use different means to help people identify the different forms of violence because that's what's difficult. We heard a lot of testimonies regarding that website, but especially with the interactive tool where people were telling us, I never would have thought that that was me. But when I decided to fill out your questionnaire, I saw it online, I was curious, and I answered yes to 8 out of 25 questions. And I'm realizing that what I'm going through is emotional violence, or this is isolation. And they're able to put words to what they're going through. I would like to ask another question, but I think we do understand what you're saying, that there needs to be a paradigm shift and work on prevention for control and coercion. My next question, and I don't want to mispronounce your name, from the Fédération des Maisons d'Hébergement. For Ms. Monastes, you mentioned the Reform and Family Law in Quebec, and in your brief you also talked about domestic violence and the notion of coercive control. This is something that the federal government worked on in the Justice Committee, and my colleague also talked about this being part of a study. How do you think, the interpreter regrets, but she didn't hear the question. We have to go beyond just criminalizing domestic violence. We need to criminalize the coercive behavior, and we're working with our colleagues in Scotland and the UK, and in 2 years things changed. regarding the different situations of violence, because it keeps people from being free. So it's a violation of women's basic rights. In the UK and Scotland examples show that there were a lot more complaints filed under coercive control, and it allowed for women who are victims to be better protected and to better protect the children. And with the special tribunal in Quebec that we're trying to put in place, how would it function without support?
Okay, so the time is up on those questions. I'm going to have to move it on. So Leah, I'm passing it over to you for 6 minutes.
Thank you so much, Chair, and I really appreciate the discussion around kids and impacts on kids and youth and violence, and want to ask a question specific to the child welfare system. Cora Morgan, who's from the Manitoba First Nations Family Advocate, in an article that was published in the CBC in 2018, indicated that, in quotes, "We know that there has been a lot of women who have been missing or murdered in Winnipeg that are part or were part of the child welfare system." The article points specifically to a young woman who was 17 that was found in a field outside of Winnipeg, after being kicked out of a group home, and two other young women who also perished in 2009, who also were part of the child welfare system. I ask that because we talk about, impacts of family violence on children, but then the very systems that are supposed to protect children are failing them and resulting in death. And often many young women, as we know, age out of care into being sexually exploited. So in saying that, I'm wondering specifically for Ms. Dunn, if there's been research around prevention in the way of supporting families in nonviolence, keeping families together instead of separating families as a way of protecting children and families from violence.
There has been work done at our center around that topic. I regret I do not have an answer at my fingertips, but I would be able to provide it to the committee if you would like.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Is that it for my time? Oh, no?
You've got like a long time. Keep
okay,
on going.
I thought so. Sorry. So the reason I asked that is because, we know that through some of the impacts of colonialism has been the apprehension, whether it's through institutions, residential schools, child welfare, certainly the 60s scoop adoptees that have resulted in very severe impacts to families, and a normalization sometimes of violence that has been experienced in these institutions, including with young men in these institutions who often don't have support. When we're talking about support programs for young men who are dealing with behaviors, violent behaviors, I'm wondering if we are using an intersectional lens in terms of how to best assist young men in finding alternative ways to be in the world. I'll put that out to the panel. Thank you.
Si je peux parler, nous,
If I can respond, our response in intervention always takes an intersectional lens. So we examine different forms of oppression. With regards to the protection of youth, there were a lot of studies done for example, by Simon Lapierre of the University of Ottawa. And the study had to do with the recognition of family violence. There's a book called Failure to Protect that also has to do with mothers having to shoulder the burden and ensure that they can protect their children without being supported by youth protection services. This study also shows that Indigenous women, immigrant women, are targeted by more restrictive measures with the youth protection services. Every year we have what we call a breakfast with the guys, and we've been working with CEGEPs, and we talk to boys and girls, young men, to see how they can be allies and fight violence against women. We discuss these matters with students studying to be police officers or social workers because it is important to discuss how men can be allies in their personal lives and their professional lives. And we do need to hear the men's perspective because thankfully they're not all violent, but we need to hear the collective and individual voices of men who are not violent, and they can be role models for young boys and girls.
Fantastic. That is the end of the first round. Now we are down to just the last few minutes here in this meeting, so I'm going to mess you guys all up. We're going to do what we did last time. 2 questions from CPC, 2 from Liberals, 1 from the Bloc, 1 from the NDP. I believe I'm going to pass the floor over right now to Leila. Leila, I'm passing the floor over to you for your first question.
Thank you, and thank you to everyone for their thoughtful presentations today. Merci beaucoup à tout le monde.
Thank you, everyone.
In this committee, we're trying to study, and one of the things that I have been looking at is what kind of legislative tools do we have at our disposal. In hearing your guys' conversations, you were talking about some of the jurisdictions to look at, and I'm wondering if there are any. In the previous panel, we were told about Australia and some of their successes. We've also talked a little bit about Clare's Law, which has been introduced in Alberta and Saskatchewan, and wondering if you could provide any insight on those jurisdictions and what we could be looking for going forward. Thank you.
Mais quand on est aussi en contact avec nos collègues,
we are in contact with our Australian counterparts, and special tribunals are even better in Australia because they hear both criminal and civil cases. It's had a significant impact in the 12 years since it was implemented. It allows for a better understanding of domestic and family violence and a better intervention that is more integrated, because we're working on both the criminal and civil aspects of the matter, and it also allows for a better framework and a better support for partners with violent behavior. This offers better results for rehabilitation and for changing the behavior of these partners, because they're the ones that have to explain it. Apologies, we don't have a lot of time, so if you could give a a short answer from the other panelists, that would be great.
I can respond if, yes, okay. I would like to suggest that it would be of the utmost importance for the federal and the provincial governments to work together to create consistency across the country. That would be my best. What has happened to a woman in BC would be the result of that would be the same as what happened or what the man is potentially charged with, for example, in Ontario. So it goes countrywide as opposed to a different story in each province or territory.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm passing it over to Jenna. Jenna, you guys have time for 2 questions.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. And my thanks to the panelists today, just inspiring the knowledge that's gathered with us. So my thanks. Question for Madame Monates. You mentioned the importance of the National Action Plan to end gender-based violence. Really, for you to expand, obviously this is a commitment that we're undertaking and that we'll be wrapping up this year. A lot of input along the way. I'd love for you to elaborate on what you're hoping to see out of that.
L'importance du plan d'action.
The importance of the National Action Plan. Well, other countries have things like this, and it's important that the federal government plays a leadership role. And as Ms. Dunn stated, we need a more coordinated response. So implementing a national strategy will allow the government to ensure that it plays a leadership role, and it will be able to work more closely with the provinces in order to have a more targeted response for women and their children. We know that provinces have action plans but no policies. But the federal government could play a leadership role and perhaps create a tribunal, talk with the provinces to see how to have a more coherent response that would be accessible from coast to coast to coast. So it's important to us that a woman who is a victim of violence have access to services throughout Canada, and I'm talking about special tribunals here, but they need to have better access to shelters. In Quebec, there are 130 of them, but in other provinces, there are very few shelters, like in Manitoba, for example. In the Northwest Territories, it's not a matter of population, it's a matter of need to ensure the safety of women. In the Northwest Territories, there are only 3 shelters, and the matter of distance to those shelters is an issue. Often you need to fly to get to a shelter, and that is a significant barrier for women to try to flee domestic violence. We have a lot of hope that we would be putting on the National Action Plan that would respond to all the needs of women, regardless of where they are in Canada.
Jen, I do this to you. We have 2 minutes left.
No problem.
Okay. So I would really like 1 minute question and answer, 1 minute question and answer, 1 minute for the block, 1 minute for the NDP, and then we'll be having to wrap it up. So I'm passing it over to the block. Go ahead, Louise.
Bien, merci, Madame Thibodeau.
Thank you very much. Ms. Thibodeau or Ms. Monastes, I think that the question is important. it would be good to have national standards, and I would like to congratulate Quebec's efforts to counter domestic violence. And I think that's something that should be continued at the federal level. But my question has to do with funding. I imagine that it's up to public safety to find the funds. It's important to have the funds between the organizations and other levels is the question for me. Yes, so in Quebec, funding for shelters comes from social and health services, and there should be funding for the basic mission so that we don't have to get some piecemeal funding from different departments. So there should be one central area for funding that shelters can go to.
So quick, Leah, you've got 1 minute left with you answering question. 1 minute.
Thank you so much, Chair. Many of the witnesses today spoke about the importance of addressing men's violence. In Winnipeg, I'm very proud to say that we have groups of young men who mentor each other, real local heroes, such as Mitch Bourbonniere, that mentor other men in addressing violence and ending misogyny, and even a good friend of mine as well, Ryan Beardy. I'm wondering if you can speak about the importance of actually supporting these initiatives. These are volunteer led without support, but the need to really invest in programs that allow men and young men support each other in moving towards nonviolence.
J'aurais peut-être quelque chose à dire. En fait, je pense que c'est...
I might have something to say. It's important to support all initiatives to counter violence, but we need to start by ensuring people's safety. It's important, though, to have a central definition of violence and what do we want our response to do so that we can judge what funds are needed, and we want them to align with the definition. In Quebec, we have a definition in the policy, and sometimes even in Quebec, it's not very clear. Certain organizations will be defending public perceptions, but that kind of go against the definition. And for SOS and other partners, it causes problems because in order to be able to respond, there should be a way for us to align and respond coherently. It's important for organizations as well that work with men. They need to have the same philosophy in their response.
Fantastic. But I would just like to say to all of the panelists today, thank you so much. I'm looking at all of us, and I know that we could have you on here for more hours because you do have so much to provide. I know that some information has been provided or requested. So if there is information that we need to be sent, please send it to the clerk of the committee, and she will be able to ensure that we get that information. To all of our panelists, thank you very, very much. To Jennifer, Manon, and Claudine, amazing. Just a reminder, our next meeting is on Friday. It will be from meeting with Dawn Canada, organization grouping sexual assault help centers in Quebec, Shield of Athena services, individual, as well as the Canadian Research Institute for the Advancement of Women. So we have a big lineup coming up again on Friday. I would like to thank all the panelists and thank you everybody for working so well together. We will see you on Friday. Thank you. Adjourned.